Hey guys, I was able to sit down and talk with Katy from at the Gingerly PA on Instagram all about her journey to becoming a PA. She's currently a second year PA student doing her clinical rotations at Idaho State. And she talks about taking a gap year and how she decided to become a PA and all the steps she took to get there.
Yeah, so my name is Katie. I am currently a second year PA student at Idaho State University, and I am set to graduate this August. I am on my OBGYN rotation, which is rotation 4 out of 8 that I have. And I did my undergrad at Purdue University, majored in biology. And then I moved back home to Boise, where I'm born and raised, to go to PA school. Um, and let's see what else. I was a CNA for 2 years before PA school. And yeah, took one gap year. I think that's about the basics. So.
Okay, cool. So, was becoming a PA something you always knew you wanted to do, or kind of how did you get to that decision?
Yeah, so I've been wanting to be a PA since I was in high school. Um, my dermatology provider growing up was a PA, and she kind of inspired me and introduced me to the profession. So once I did my research, and I kind of always knew I wanted to be in medicine, but she's the one who introduced me to the PA profession, and it just kind of clicked, and I really liked the flexibility of it. Yeah, that's kind of where it all started.
So you knew going into college as a biology major, like, I want to be a PA.
Yes, yeah,
Okay,
I had an
cool.
advantage there, I think.
Yeah. Did that
Yeah.
ever waver at any point, or did you stay pretty true to that throughout undergrad?
The only thing where it kind of flip-flopped is I started out as a biology genetics major. I really liked that field and genetics, so I thought maybe I would do something with that. But after taking a couple of genetics classes, it was like way more math than I bargained for. So I kind of switched paths and I was like, no, yeah, PA is definitely where I want to go. So,
Okay, cool. So knowing that, which I feel like even now a lot of people still don't really figure it out till later on that I talk to,
mhm.
like kind of, and not that much later, but maybe sophomore year, junior year, they know medicine, but
Right.
they don't necessarily come into college wanting to become a PA. What did you do from the beginning? Like knowing, I've got to get hours, I've got to do all these things. Did you kind of start that right away, or how did you organize your time to get all that done?
Yeah, so I kind of started out just not knowing all the things that go into a PA school application. And the time that I really dove into what it's going to take and what schools require was my sophomore year. So I met with a PA school advisor from Purdue. She helps with all things PA, which I don't know if all schools have that, but we're pretty lucky to have a PA school advisor. And
Yeah.
so I set up a meeting with her, and she gave me a list of like the most generic prerequisite classes that I had to make sure I took, and starting to think about getting patient care hours and getting letters of recommendation. So after knowing that is when I kind of looked into what I wanted to do for my patient care hours. And so that summer, after I signed up for CNA classes and then ended up working part time the end of my junior year and my senior year.
Okay, cool. You mentioned you took a gap year. Was that
Mhm.
something that you planned, or what? Gap years tend to be a little controversial. Like some people are all for them, some people really don't want one. Like, what were your thoughts about that?
I wasn't sure at first, but after starting to gather everything that I needed for the application process, I just didn't feel ready the end of my junior year. So I am so happy I did take a gap year and kind of got everything organized, took my time. The summer after I graduated college, I really focused all my attention on studying for the GRE and making sure I had my letters of recommendation in place. So I'm really happy I did. I can't imagine doing that like while I'm in school still. So
No, that's good to hear because I just feel like everyone has this sense of urgency. Like, I've got to
Right.
do it all right now and get everything in and get accepted and all this stuff. And I don't think it necessarily has to be that way. And I think that adds more stress. And it was probably good that you were able to recognize, I need to slow it down
Yeah,
and
yeah,
take
it's
a step back.
stressful enough. So
Yeah.
I would say take your time, wait till you're actually ready to apply.
Yeah, I love that. So when it was time to apply, kind of going back and thinking about the application process, which maybe it's hard for me to think back on mine, just because it was, I think I try to block it out. But what did you find most difficult? Like, kind of what was that experience like for you?
So I think the most difficult part was just keeping track of everything. And obviously every school has different requirements. So I found it really helpful to make an Excel sheet of all the schools, when the deadline was, what classes I needed to take, all of that stuff. Just I had one place to check it off when I finished. Um, and then another hard part was just figuring out how to manage CASPA. It's a lot of technical things, sending in your transcripts. So that's definitely a process in itself, just navigating the website to apply. Um, and then waiting. Waiting's really hard too.
Yeah, that's what most people sometimes in our Facebook group will kind of say like, "What's the hardest part right now?" And someone always says waiting, which is true. I
Mhm.
mean, once you do everything, you have no control and you just sit there and
Exactly.
check your email every 5 minutes.
Yes.
So, what is there anything that you feel like made you stand out on your application?
I think in general, I was a pretty well-rounded applicant.
Okay.
So I really spent a lot of time making sure each element of my application was the best it could be. Um, and my personal statement, I spent a lot of time on. I went to the writing lab and made sure I had tons of people look over it from professors and family and from all different points of view, looking over my personal statement. Um, yeah, I would say just being well rounded is important.
Yeah, it sounds like you put a lot of work into kind of making sure it was as complete as possible. And that's something I usually say, look at your weaknesses and try to work on those, not just the
Right.
areas where you're strong. And don't give them a reason to reject you. I mean, you want
Mhm.
them to, like, if you asked, hey, why wasn't I accepted? They really can't come up with anything because you've done everything you're
Right.
supposed to. Um, so, how many schools did you end up applying to, and kind of what were the outcomes there?
I applied to 8 or 9 different schools, and I got an interview at one and accepted to one. So I got lucky.
Yeah,
First round, yep,
that's all you need, right? Um,
exactly.
and where do you go now?
Idaho State.
Okay. What kind of, when you were choosing where to apply, what went into those decisions for those 8 or 9 schools?
Yeah, so I really based all of my criteria on location.
Okay.
So I'm from here, I have family here. So Idaho State was my number one choice. And then I applied to some in Arizona where I have family, and then Colorado and Utah just to stay in that Northwest region. So I'm kind of close to family, but that was a huge factor for me.
Now, Idaho doesn't have many programs, correct?
No, this is the only one.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, unless they had some brand new ones. So, I just have questions about Idaho State University now.
Yeah.
How many of how big is your class?
Our class is 72
Okay.
students, but we're separated into 3 different campuses.
Okay. So, how many of those people are in state?
In state, I would
Like from
say
Idaho or nearby?
about a third of us,
Okay.
maybe. I'm
Okay.
not sure the
So,
exact statistics, but probably about a third.
I just wasn't sure if them being the only school, if they gave like a strong preference to Idaho residents. So I went to a public school in
Hmm.
Georgia, and they were required to accept 90% of Georgia
Oh, wow.
residents. And so I know some other in-state schools are like that. Like in Texas, they usually really only accept Texas residents for the most part. So I wasn't sure kind of how yours
Yeah, I
was.
don't think they have a requirement of how
Okay.
many in-state students to accept. I think just more in-state students end up applying here than
Yeah.
out of state. So,
Okay, cool. Good to
yeah.
know. So is there anything about your school that kind of makes it unique or you think people should know about?
I think just the application is a little bit different. So they base their acceptances on what's called a file score. So they take your prerequisite class GPA plus your percentile from your quantitative GRE and your verbal
Mm-hmm.
percentile for your GRE, add it together, and then if you meet this certain file score for that particular year, then you get accepted, or then the committee reviews your application and can accept you for an interview. So at first, I submitted my application and I didn't meet the average file score for the year. So I ended up retaking three of my classes online,
Mm-hmm.
updated CASPA, and then I met the file score and got an interview. So it was a little bit of a different process than I've heard of anywhere else.
Interesting. So do they still look at kind of your overall GPA and science GPA too, or they really only look at that prereq?
Just that prerequisite GPA. I
That's
think
most
there was
important.
6 classes.
Okay. That is interesting.
Yeah.
And then you still had an interview though.
Yes. Yep. So they did 3 mini one-on-one interviews.
Okay.
Mhm.
How did that go for you? Did you feel good about it or not
I
good or
think I felt as good as I could. It's obviously a nerve-wracking process. Um, but everyone I interviewed with, they don't try and make it an intimidating process. It was, as good as it could go. So I was hopeful.
how long did it take for you to hear back?
Let's see, I interviewed the end of February, I think, and I knew 3 weeks later.
Okay, that's not too bad.
Yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
a terrible wait
Didn't make
process.
you wait months and months.
No.
Um, so now you've actually gotten through a good bit of PA school, but
Mhm.
once you got to PA school, started PA school, what initially did you find to be the most difficult part?
I think most people will say this, just the amount of information and then learning how to study. And every single class I studied differently too. So that was hard to adjust. But being organized, keeping a planner, and just writing everything down, kind of prioritizing first when I got home that day helped me a lot. And also just being burnt out. Like my program is only 24 months,
Oh
so
wow.
we don't have any summer break or anything like that. It's just kind of go, go, go. And so being burnt out is really tough when you just don't have any more energy to give. But
Oh
made it
gosh.
through so far.
Yeah, you did it. So now you're on rotations, which is typically for the most part fun. Um, so you said you've done four so far, and you have four to go.
Uh-huh.
What have you enjoyed the most?
See, so far I have done family medicine, pediatrics, psych, and I'm almost done with OBGYN. And I've definitely enjoyed this one by far the most. I can definitely see myself doing women's health after I graduate, which is kind of exciting. I think it's the first one where I can see myself doing that later on. And I'm also really excited for my dermatology rotation, which is my elective, since that's kind of why I became a PA. I'm really looking forward to that one too.
Well, I'm partial to derm, so
Yeah.
no, it for a PA. It's a great field. It can be a little bit hard to break in, but
Yeah.
I mean the jobs are out there, and I think it's a lot of fun. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good field to go for. What would your advice be to someone who is unsure about whether they want to pursue becoming a PA?
I think the only way to really know is to shadow. So I'd say shadow as many PAs as you can in different specialties. And I also shadowed nurse practitioners and doctors as well, just to ask them their opinion, why they chose that particular profession, and kind of get a feel for it. So I think that's really the closest you can get to experiencing that is to shadow.
Yeah, and I completely agree.
Mhm.
Where can everybody find you and follow along and see where you end up after school?
So far, the only platform I'm on is Instagram, and I am at the Gingerly PA. So if you aren't following me already, check it out. I'm going to be posting lots of pre-PA advice and my journey through my rotations and after I graduate, obviously. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Savannah, for having me.
Yeah.